Ready, Phil? Do you wanna intro?
I think I did last time, so you can do this time.
I did last time, but I will do
Did
it.
you?
I will do it this
All
time.
right, you do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello and welcome to another episode of How to Build a Theatre, a podcast charting the creation of a new theatre in Brussels while we're looking at the wider theatre industry. My name is Edward McMillan, the Artistic Director of the Bridge Theatre.
And my name is Phil Wilcox, nothing officially associated with the Bridge Theatre, but a good old school friend of Ed and a singer-musician here in London.
So maybe I will tell you, not forced at all, I will tell you a little bit about the Bridge Theatre if you'd like to, Phil. I'm always hesitating at the moment because I'm hesitating between the publicity line that we are taking and also making this podcast interesting. So I'm trying to give the podcast some information that I can't release publicly, which makes it sound very exciting. But in essence, we're still exploring options on a particular venue that we have in mind. And I think that these past 2 months, I guess, has been a test of patience for me, because it's been a lot of waiting around and trying to find the right people to contact, and then waiting for them to get back to you, and then waiting for another person to get back to you, and climbing through the Brussels bureaucracy, which I think I probably mentioned last time. But we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's a process of going through getting the permits basically to do our activities in the different in the venue that we have in mind. So that's like the urban planning permit, the environment permit, making sure we've got the agreement of the fire service as well. So it's a lot of that's all basically in my mind, and we have this now very complicated recipe or concoction which will hopefully allow us to move forward, but we haven't actually signed anything yet, so that makes it very scary, especially because at the same time we are trying to plan activities in a venue that may not happen.
This is very exciting. I mean, this is such a little piquancy of interest in our podcast that we're nearly bordering into a new genre. This is nearly true crime going on right now, subverting the Brussels democracy. What can you give us anything else? What kind of venue is it? Is it associated with another nefarious entertainment industry like the last one was?
It is not related to the adult entertainment industry, no, like the last one. It's an industrial space, actually, which means it's more possibly more suited to our aims, actually, because it's, first of all, it's bigger, so it offers more flexibility. But because it's an industrial space, it means that's why the whole permit issue is a thing. We have to get it changed from being industrial to basically cultural. Which, at least here in Belgium, culture is well regarded and people want it, and there's a lot of goodwill and good willingness from the authorities for something of this nature, rather than, I don't know, another supermarket or something. But still, it's problematic bureaucratically.
Yeah, but I mean, it's great though that it's that sort of space. You hear about theatre happening in that sort of industrial kind of atmosphere quite a lot, and it's perfect, isn't it? Because it's blank canvas. It can be a bit rough and ready, but it's versatile. It's a really useful space to have.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think, but at the same time, I think there is interesting facets about it, and that kind of starting to bring us onto our guests for this week, because it's a warehouse space, a workshop space. It's very, I don't know, for example, it's lightly insulated, or it's not really insulated, for example, and this brings us onto, and you have to do a lot of work with inside it to make it usable, and this kind of brings us onto the questions of sustainability, and how we can transform this so that we are being more as sustainable as possible, as we possibly can be, given given our financial constraints, given our lack of expertise, and given that we are creating a theatre as well. Which is why I think our guests are well timed for this month. So please welcome onto the show. We have two lovely people from Brussels. I believe you're from Brussels. We have Paul van der Straeten and Barbara Goffin. Roughly said correctly, who are the project coordinators of the Brussels Donut project at the NGO not-for-profit Confluence. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
How are you guys doing?
Great.
Great. Looking forward to speaking with you.
Phil, would you like to prime them with your scary quick-fire questions?
So Barbara, let's start with you. If I could give a couple to you. Do you have a favorite season in the year?
I love all seasons, but I would say the le printemps, the spring. So spring would be my favorite season.
Is there a reason for that? Is it the sort of the usual thing about rejuvenation, regeneration?
Exactly. We have more lights and all the flowers are coming out, and it's very beautiful. It gives also positive vibes to our spirit that needs some positive things after long winter and darkness.
The light is the important thing, isn't it? When the days get longer, everything gets a little bit easier. Lovely. Paul, I'll go to you then. Are you an early bird or a night owl? Do you get up early or do you prefer to stay up late?
Definitely an early bird. Yeah.
Oh, really? What's your average wake up time?
Not that early, but usually I'm one of those guys who are quickly tired in the evening, and when I quickly are tired than others. I love doing parties and so on with my friend, but as they can last for a long time, usually around, I don't know, 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. I'm go like, oh, I'm tired, let's go to bed. So, and I'm more productive also on the morning than in the late afternoon. And I don't know, there is such a great energy in the morning. So definitely an early bird, yeah.
Barbara, for what in your life do you feel most grateful?
Well, for what I would, that's then maybe a broad answer, but just grateful about having a life on this planet that is still, hopefully for the coming years, but still very joyful to enjoy. So having the chance to see things that we might not see in the future anymore, meeting the wildlife, biodiversity, and the mountains with the snow, and so I'm very grateful for that every day.
Maybe just to go back a bit, we kind of heard a little bit about you, but it'd be interesting just to have a brief snippet of your background each, and now what do you do, and what is this donut thing that we keep mentioning?
So yes, I work since a year now almost a year at Confluence, and before that I have been working a long time at Fair Trade Belgium. So. Also a very interesting mission to guarantee a better future for our producers in the global south. Before that I was working more in the private sector, in the food sector. So what has led me to the Donut project is really interested to go a step further and as you understand a bit better the theory of the donut and see what support what's going on here in Brussels, and we have the chance to continue a project that has started in 2021 of 10 months that was really aimed to see, okay, is the donut something that can help Brussels to operate the economic transition? And the conclusion was positive. So we received a second funding for 2 years now to continue the work. And I will explain that a bit further later. I'll let Paul introduce himself.
Yeah, so hello everybody, I'm Paul. I live here in Brussels. I'm only 29, so I don't have a lot of work background, but I've already worked as a political assistant in a youth federation for 2 years approximately, and now I'm on this project with Barbara, trying to make the donut of Brussels. So that's a bit of my background.
Fantastic. Two interesting profiles. So you've both mentioned it. Can you try and explain very simply what is this donut of Brussels? I mean, I've seen a lot of donut shops in this city, but I'm not sure that's the same thing.
So yeah, let me first explain the donut theory. So it's an economic model that has been developed by Kate Raworth. That's a difficult name for us to pronounce. So it's an English economist. She has worked long at Oxfam, and her idea was really to actually create a new visual to represent how the economy should look like. Instead of being based on infinite growth, the idea is to have a visual showing two limits that should be respected. So the first limit is the ecological ceiling, which is composed of the 9 planetary boundaries that should be respected. And the idea is that we should not overshoot those 9 planetary boundaries in order to stay on a healthy planet. And then the inner circle is the social foundation. And that social foundation is composed of different dimensions of the SDGs, so the Sustainable Development Goals, that have been adopted by the United Nations. And it represents all the basic needs that every human on this planet should have in order to have decent living. So with those two limits, you can see easily how it looks like a donut. And the idea is to say that all economic activities of a city, of a country, of a territory should happen inside that donut. So in the flesh of the donut, which would be then actually the safe and just space where humanity can thrive in balance.
So Kate Raworth, she came up with this visual, I guess, which is very easy for people to grasp, the donut. And then, do you know what happened next? How long? How do you know when this was? When she first thought about this and the development of it, and then how it's being used now today?
Yeah, so she has developed that around 10 years ago, so it's not so new, but still not very known by the majority of us, I think. Since then, there has been a lot of interest from different parts of the world. So Amsterdam is one of the first cities that has started with that model, and Brussels is one of the pioneers as well to work with it. But we see more and more cities using that model as a reference to operate the transition that is needed. That drives me to what do we do in Brussels, and what most of the cities are doing worldwide is really to work first on the portrait. We call it the portrait, but that's actually the borders of the donut. So it's a set of alternative indicators on ecological and on the ecological ceiling and the social foundation that should be identified as the reference indicators to as a new compass to help the region to thrive. So instead of having just one solely indicator such as the GDP, this set of alternative indicators should be the reference to go towards a future that is desirable for the planet and for the people. And so that's the first thing that most of the cities do when they start working with the donut is to work on that portrait, see where are we scoring well and where are the red lines going, where are we going above and beyond the two boundaries that I have explained earlier. And then what we do in Brussels on top of that, and that's maybe more unique in Brussels, that's a bit different than in other cities, but we also work with the public sector and with association and the private sector to identify pathways to be able to enter inside that donut. So we work with different tools that have been developed by Confluence and also by the DEAL, the Donut Economic Action Lab, which is a platform that is created by Kate Roth and her team to develop tools to support economic actors to have a reflexive moment to think about, okay, where are we scoring well, where are we not scoring so well, and how can we do to move towards the inside of the donut as much as possible. What are the ecological things that we do which are very positive, but that can have a bad effect on social side. So that's also the strength of the tool, is to have a holistic view that is taking into account as well the environmental challenges as well as the social challenges.
Amazing idea. And Barbara, I love the fact that you've gone from fair trade into working with Confluence. You've gone from sort of real food into abstract food. I really quite like that. It's boiling it down. Essentially, you're talking about the model whereby we want to be in, if you'll excuse the pun, the sweet spot of the ring of the donut, isn't it? If we aim if we fall out of that inwards, society collapses, and if we fall out of that outwards, if we push too far, then the environment, the earth, begins to collapse, begins to be damaged. I think is the sort of concept of it, and it is brilliant when you actually, if any of our listeners are struggling with hearing about the concept, just Google it and see an image, see a picture of it, because it really clearly, I think how Barbara's explained it is brilliant already. But if you need extra, just look at the image of the donut, and it's very, very clear. Who and how, to either person who might answer this, who and how are those, or who sets and how do they set the limits that say, okay, who sets the boundaries of the donut? Who says, okay, beyond this and we're damaging the environment? I suppose scientists, and then the inner ring of the, below this and we're damaging society, these members of society, I suppose, again, economists perhaps. But is there a sort of methodology behind that and a strict guideline across the whole idea of the donut economics?
Yeah, also you might have seen, and if you Google it, you will see then the result of the planetary donut made by Kate Rayworth and her team, where you see the red dots. And here then the ecological ceiling, it's based on earth sciences. So it's indeed scientific experts that have worked on the 9 planetary boundaries and that know exactly at what points do we overshoot and we have a very strong damage on Earth if we go beyond it. So that's Earth sciences. And on the social foundation, the SDGs, well, it's less easy because as you might be aware, social challenges are very different from one place to another, and so have to be adapted depending on where we are on Earth. But there are indeed the SDGs that are common to all. So no poverty, access to food, access to housing, etc. So what Kate Rayworth has done, it's macroeconomic indicators that have been set and that are clear. But when going to a national level or a territorial level or regional level in Brussels, that's exactly what we need to do with on a participative way, so with citizens, but also with the politics, to identify which are the right indicators to follow in Brussels and what is the target that we need to reach. And that's a very political question, of course. So it's not an easy one to answer.
And those discussions are still ongoing, or where are we in Brussels?
Yes. So in Brussels, we have made a first version of the portrait, which after the first phase of the project. And of course, it's not something that is final and that is all set. So it's a really work in progress and could be a long-term shot. But the aim is after our second phase. So end of this year, we will have a second version of that portrait that will be more defined, more precise on the indicators that have to be measured on the different dimensions. But again, I think it's a work in progress that always have to be that can always be improved and fine-tuned. So yeah.
And when you say a portrait, that includes the boundaries as well as the current status, or that's a separate exercise?
No, yeah, it's indeed the boundaries and the current status, and also the target where we want to go. And something I haven't explained yet, but it's quite important also to know is when working on that portrait, the idea is to how do we do that? We unroll the donut to identify 2 additional measures that are important. So on top of the ecological ceiling and the social foundation, we also add a local dimension and a global dimension. And that helps us to see how our activities can have an impact at local level. That's quite evident, but then also on the global level, which is not so evident and easy for us to see at first.
Shed a little light on how Brussels is performing at the moment in some of these boundaries? Are there areas that need particularly strong work at the moment?
So yeah, like Barbara said, there is a big warning because neither results that we're going to present here are exhaustive or definitive. But yeah, we have come with some findings at the end of the first phase of the project. And concerning this local social aspect lens, it is well known that Brussels area generates a lot of wealth, generates more like around 86 billion euro GDP. It comes with 71,000 per capita. So we generate a lot of wealth, but this wealth is really unequally shared because 10% of the population suffer from material deprivation, and a third of the population is at risk of monetary poverty. So that's a bit of a paradox of Brussels. It is wealthy, but at the same time, have a lot of people in a poverty situation. And in terms of employment too, only half of the population of the working age approximately are working in Brussels. So we have quite a high rate of unemployment in Brussels. But we should never point because we depict here quite a dark image, but that majority of the people here living in Brussels are satisfied with the quality of the life of their neighborhood, of the city, and they feel saved in Brussels. So that's for the local social aspect. In terms of local environmental aspect in Brussels, it doesn't really differ from other big cities in Europe. So we don't respect really the environmental boundaries, and we have a lot of room for improvement there, because for instance we import a lot of materials and we export a lot of waste that are not neither reused or recycled, so that's a big problem, but the Brussels area is really committed to a greener future and really trying to push forward all the environmental policies. For instance, we have several plans here in Brussels. Good food, good move. All plans trying to push forward the Brussels the area in the right sustainable way. And also this plan that we are working on is calling shifting the economy. It's really the strategy for moving the area toward the transition economy. And it basically it is the idea is to allocate the public subsidies to exemplary actors here in Brussels, economic actors that will be exemplary in on environmental and social aspects. And the idea is to increase the public subsidies in 2024 for those exemplary actors, and then in 2030 to really restrain all those public subsidies to those actors. So those subsidies will only be available for exemplary actors. So that's a bit the philosophy of the shifting the economy, the strategic plan here in Brussels. And concerning the global social aspects, like the other northern region, Brussels is contributing to the deterioration of the living condition of other population elsewhere in the world due to its integration in global supply chain. So it's quite complicated to really measure that precisely because it's such a large scale. But we have tried it here to have a glimpse on it and to measure it with two iconic, two symbolic items that we love here in Brussels: the chocolates and the smartphone that have become this this must-have object. And so for those two items, we have shown that really it doesn't respect the human rights for the people that are manufacturing and creating there in other places of the world. All of these sectors are associated with undignified and very low-paid working condition. So that's one of the main aspects of the theory of key priorities, is always to try to think global, because we tend to think of, especially for cities, to look at about here, what's the context, what are the stakes we are facing here, but really to take into account the global wellness and of people living abroad. And lastly, about the global ecological aspect of the portraits, it shows that we are overshooting those planetary boundaries with our Western lifestyle. So on the whole, the region uses far more than its fair share of global resources. But what is important here is also, is again, to take into account not only the emissions that are produced on the Brussels area, but to take into account all the emissions that are generated with the goods that we're consuming here. And that makes very more authentic measure of what we are actually producing in terms of CO2 here in Brussels. And it's actually bigger than what is produced here if we take into account all what has been generates of CO2 emission to create all of those objects that we're consuming every day here in Brussels. It's outreach what we are producing in terms of car, eating, buildings, and so it's important to take that into account.
It's quite a depressing picture that you paint there, Paul. I wonder if, I mean, you know, politicians are always looking for quick wins, right? So are there any immediately actionable things that we can do as Brussels as a whole, or as individuals living in Brussels, that can make a difference?
That's a good question. So there is always those actions that you can take individually that are good for the environment and so on, that we all know of. But for the concerning the Brussels area, yeah, as you may know, we have an issue with the Brussels is one of the main polluted region because of the mobility in the car. The car flows in Brussels, and that's actually now that there is this good move plan and strategy that they're trying to emerge, but it's difficult because people have this strong links with emotional link with the car and so on, and so that's maybe one of the aspects. It's trying to go on the right, I mean, really an important aspect is trying to go on the right direction with concerning mobility, trying to take more bikes or public transports or walk, and to support maybe this plan.
Just interject. I mean, as also a foreigner living here, it's always been noticeable that the people in Brussels or maybe Belgium in as a whole like their cars a lot. And I think there's a whole economic situation here, isn't there, where people have their company cars. It's another kind of way of remuneration away from taxes. They also get the fuel vouchers as well. There's the whole system seems to be set up so that people can and do have cars and use their cars instead of public transport, unfortunately.
Yeah, in what you point out, like this what we call salary car are really a problem. The government is actually funding private car, which is really problematic if you want to go for a greener city. So yeah, it's a big topic, but I think it's a big topic in all of other cities. I was reading an article about Barcelona trying to tackle this problem. It's also, even though they are making big improvement there, people all around the world, it's the mobility, it's a kind of this, I don't know, emotionally linked area topics. Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's all about, we're talking about these big things, but it's all about essentially what kind of city do we want to be living in the coming years. I guess that's the kind of ultimate question.
Indeed, the central question that is being asked by Kate Raworth and the work that we do is how can our place become a home to thriving people in a thriving place while respecting the well-being of all the people and the health of the whole planet. So that's really the central question that is indeed not easy to answer, but that we have to keep in our minds every time we are talking to different actors.
I find it fascinating that it seems to me as an outsider that it's many cities are picking this up. You've already mentioned Amsterdam, you mentioned Barcelona as well, obviously Brussels. I'm sure there are other cities. Is there two questions? Is there any moves at a national level or even European level to have this way of thinking? And then maybe a secondary question, if it is cities that are concentrating on this, you said that Brussels is quite typical for a northern Western European city, that it's exceeding our planetary boundaries. Are there any example cities that you know of that are not exceeding their planetary boundaries?
For the second question, like the best-in-class cities in Europe are probably like Stockholm, Copenhagen, Vienna is quite good also, and I think of those three ones. So yeah, they have like much more greener space, much electric mobility. So they are further on the way to that green horizon that we are aiming. But
were they closer already, or did they work hard to get there, do you think?
I think they work hard, but they're closer. But I don't know exactly if those cities are respecting perfectly the planetary boundaries, because it's quite of a challenge, to be honest. But yeah, they are closer than us. That's for sure.
But I was going to complete by saying, in general, yeah, there is no city that's really all activities are inside the donut, and we really see, yeah, big tendency of seeing the Western, well, the most developed cities that are overshooting on the ecological side, and then the poorest cities and regions that are overshooting on the social side. So each region has its challenges, and indeed, anyone has still a lot of work to do to enter inside that donut.
And concerning the Europe, there is nothing concrete for the moment. Still, they had some initiatives in the European sphere. We had a meeting not long ago with the European Commission. They're interested, but it's quite kind of complicated to see whether it can really be implemented, because I think European institution are still driven with this economic scheme of the economic growth, and they're still on that. So it's kind of a touchy move to go to really endorse the donut for them.
Well, it's brilliant. I mean, we've talked a lot about the theory of donut economics now, and you've painted a really clear picture for us. Thank you. I guess in our last sort of few minutes, we probably ought to think about the application of that to theatre. This being essentially about the building of a theatre. Do you know, guys? I know that you're not specifically working in the area of theatre, but do you guys happen to know of any case studies whereby theatre has taken on the idea of donut economics or the concepts of it? And are there success stories? Do you have advice for Ed building this new theatre and how he might adopt some of the principles you're talking about?
It's kind of funny because we are actually now working with several cultural institutions here in Brussels, and this trying to see how we can implement the theory for their activities. And so, but we are really starting testing the theory, so we can't really deliver now some lessons and findings, but we will keep you in touch. But I mean, in general, some milestone about the environmental and social aspect of the cultural sector. We first have to be clear about the fact that the cultural sector is by far not the most contributing sectors in terms of carbon emission. But I mean, that being said, since the environmental challenge requires a global shift that must be undertaken by all sectors, it's important that the cultural sector fairly contributes. But I think one of the main pseudo impact of the sector, the cultural sector, concern mobility. We have seen that in one of the cultural institutions with who we are working with, and it's the biggest, clearly the biggest pseudo impact, and so that's really a challenge. For I think the cultural institution to see how they can bring the public without the individual car. Otherwise, also maybe we need to pay attention to the heat of the building, renovation, isolation, and maybe also the circularity of the material. And there's lots of innovation and room for improvement. I think in the it really starts now. Lots of initiatives, really interesting initiatives. But actually, probably the main impact of the cultural sector in this transition will be will not concern the actual material pseudo impact, but really its ability to produce new immaterial contents. New stories about a desirable future and so on. But I think that's the in about the creation in itself, and what kind of message your performance convey. So programmation choice is perhaps the most important aspect. Lastly, maybe I think it's important also that even if some change are not that impacting in terms of reducing your ecological footprints, if they are visible, communicable, maybe that can play an important role also. So I will advise that don't focus solely on material impact, but also like on symbolic impact that are visible that can inspire the public and others. And concerning the social aspect, I would say that as we all know, I mean, in Brussels, the cultural sectors and are still in the for privileged people, probably for educated and economically well-off people. So it is important to cultural institutions try to open as broad as they can the audience and to reach less privileged population, and trying to bring this wealth and this of culture to those people that are a bit of lacking cultural contents. But that's a big challenge, and that's a tricky question to see how do you do that.
Thank you so much for these thoughts, Paul. Barbara, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to, well, when he was talking about the narrative, so how can you think about the content? I think one of the main challenges is indeed changing consumer habits. We are all consumers, and the way we buy things and we eat things has a great big impact on our planet. So I think it's indeed a long-term process to change that, and culture sector has a key role to play there. So that would be indeed our first advice to work on.
No, thank you for these, Phil. You want to say something, but I will keep talking anyway. No, I completely agree with everything you said, actually, and I've always thought that actually materially really is the cultural sector is not going to make a difference to whether we survive this climate crisis or not, in terms of the material impact. I also did hear about that mobility is the biggest issue, and I actually went to an event by Triodos Bank, and they presented a report from France, I think it was, about a study of cultural institutions there, and that showed that mobility was the biggest material impact on climate. But I completely agree with you that I really truly believe that communication, and both in raw communication and the programming, is the biggest is the most helpful way that the cultural sector can actually engage in the conversation and inspire people, as you say, Paul, to actually do something about it.
And then the last, just small comment, our aim would also to be really great to have, such as in Amsterdam, a network of all actors willing to work together, to think on the solutions to enter inside the donut. And the question you are asking are the same for other sectors, and we're working on a big project with a European building willing to renovate its building and be compliant with the donut. And so, everything that we will do, we will share it on our webpage, so that it can be an inspiration for other people who are active on renovation, for example. So that's the aim on the long term, to have such coalition and inspire each other with our activities.
I think that's really important, Barbara, and I'm really glad that we've turned a fairly serious conversation, as we always do when we talk about, we end up talking about sustainability quite a lot on this podcast in terms of theatre and building theatre and that sort of stuff. And it's been a really broad conversation today, which has been brilliant, and I'm glad that we've rounded it with something really positive. What you've just said there, Barbara, as well, is I think that's really important as well for an organisation like yours to do, and for the whole sort of concept, the bigger organisations behind concepts like Donut, because I've noticed colleagues of mine, for example, just individual artists, they might be an actor or a singer, declaring themselves as carbon neutral or a sustainable performer on their website, for example. And I'm sat there scratching my head thinking, well, what does that mean? And I might quiz them and they say, well, where possible, I don't drive to the gig, I take the train, and I don't print out scores, I use my iPad, and I blah, you know, and you think, well, okay, great. And I know organizations, you know, small festivals and things like that who are saying, right, we're paper free now. And in reality, like Ed's saying, you know, it's not going to save the world that they don't print 200 copies of their program per concert, but rather provide a QR code for people to scan on their phone. But it's like you guys are saying, it's the message that you're giving across. We're doing our little bit, and we're not paying for extortionate airfares for people to fly across the world. You know, it's you know, we're all doing our little bit, but it's really great as well that those can all be connected via an organization like yours, that they can all where, you know, from individuals and small companies just saying, look, we've stopped printing programs, we're not using the car so much more. They can all sort of come under one umbrella. So that's really positive.
And on that note, I would like to sincerely thank both of you for coming on the episode today. So Barbara, Paul, thank you so much for telling us everything about Donut.Brussels and also for your ideas. It's been really, really nice to have you on. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for inviting, and hope that our contribution will be appreciated.
And Phil, see you next month.
See you next month. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.